Why Euron Greyjoy turned on Yara during the naval ambush. Welcome to the channel. Subscribe if you love House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, and deep dives into Westerosi lore. Let's begin. When we talk about betrayal in Game of Thrones, there are a few moments that immediately spring to mind. Littlefinger's constant backstabbing, Jaime Lannister's infamous shove at Winterfell, and of course, the Red Wedding. But there's one betrayal that, while not as bloody as some others, is just as shocking and devastating, and it involves one of the most chaotic and unpredictable characters in the entire series, Euron Greyjoy. When Euron captured Yara Greyjoy during a surprise naval ambush, it wasn't just a random act of violence. It was cold, calculated, and deeply personal. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the real reason Euron turned on Yara. Not just the surface explanation, but the political strategy, the psychological warfare, and the deeply twisted family dynamics that made this betrayal inevitable. We'll explore the political stakes for the Ironborn at the time, Euron's obsession with power and reputation, how his rivalry with Yara went far beyond family squabbles, and how this betrayal set into motion a chain of events that would define the Greyjoy family's fate. This is the full story of why Euron Greyjoy turned on Yara during the naval ambush. Background: the Greyjoy family's tense history. To truly understand Euron's betrayal, we need to step back and look at the Greyjoy family history, because the seeds of this moment were planted long before Euron ever sailed into King's Landing. The Greyjoys are the ruling house of the Iron Islands, fierce seafarers, raiders, and plunderers who live by the old way, taking what is theirs through strength, not trade. Their house words, "We do not sow," reflect their entire culture. They survive and thrive by conquest. At the head of the family was Balon Greyjoy, father to Yara and Theon, and older brother to Euron. Balon was stubborn, proud, and uncompromising. Years earlier, he led the Greyjoy rebellion against the Iron Throne, a rebellion that failed miserably and resulted in the death of two of his sons. Theon was taken hostage by the Starks to ensure Balon's good behavior, leaving Yara as the heir apparent. Meanwhile, Euron was a black sheep among black sheep. Known as Crow's Eye for the dark patch covering one of his eyes, he was charismatic, fearless, and utterly ruthless. He had been banished from the Iron Islands by Balon for the crime of seducing his brother's wives, and, according to some rumors, for darker deeds involving sorcery and murder. For years, Euron roamed the seas, captaining the Silence, a ship crewed entirely by men whose tongues he had cut out, so they could never speak of his deeds. His reputation across Essos was one of terror. He was a reaver, a manipulator, and a man who seemed to thrive on chaos. When Euron returned to the Iron Islands after Balon's death, it set the stage for a power struggle with Yara. The King's Moot, Euron versus Yara. After Balon's suspicious death, pushed from a rope bridge during a storm by none other than Euron himself, the Ironborn held a Kingsmoot to decide the next ruler of the Iron Islands. Yara, confident and respected by her people, stepped forward with a clear plan: abandon Balon's doomed wars on the mainland, and instead focus on strengthening the islands, building alliances, and finding a sustainable way to ensure their survival. She even had Theon, recently returned from his harrowing time as Ramsay Bolton's prisoner, standing by her side to support her claim. Euron, however, had a different approach, one that combined raw ambition with theatrical flair. He mocked Yara's ideas, belittled Theon, and promised the Ironborn a prize unlike any other. He would marry Daenerys Targaryen, ally with her dragons, and together they would conquer Westeros. His promises, combined with his legendary reputation as a feared pirate, swayed the Ironborn. Euron was crowned king of the Iron Islands, and one of his first decrees was to have Yara and Theon hunted down. Yara's rebellion and Euron's pride. Rather than submit, Yara and Theon stole the best ships of the Iron Fleet and fled, eventually sailing to Meereen to offer their services to Daenerys before Euron could get to her. This was a massive insult to Euron's pride. Not only had Yara humiliated him at the Kingsmoot by openly challenging his claim, but she had also robbed him of his most prized ships and stolen the very alliance he was banking on to cement his power. From this point on, Euron's rivalry with Yara wasn't just political, it was personal. For Euron, power was never just about ruling, it was about domination. It wasn't enough to win. He needed to crush his enemies in such a way that they could never rise again. And Yara's escape represented both a political threat and a stain on his image as the unstoppable Crow's Eye. The alliance with Cersei and the naval ambush. While Yara and Theon were forging an alliance with Daenerys, Euron pivoted, turning his attention to Cersei Lannister. He sailed into King's Landing with a fleet of imposing black ships and a swagger that made even Jaime Lannister uneasy. Euron offered Cersei the Iron Fleet in exchange for marriage, promising to help her defeat Daenerys. Cersei didn't trust him, but she saw the value in his fleet and tasked him with proving his loyalty. This led directly to the ambush. Euron learned that Yara's fleet, along with the Dornish allies she had ferried to Daenerys, was sailing in open waters. Using his knowledge of the seas, he planned a brutal nighttime assault. The Silence and the rest of his fleet struck with terrifying precision, setting ships ablaze and slaughtering crews in a storm of fire and iron. The betrayal and capture of Yara. During the battle, Euron personally boarded Yara's ship. In a display that was part military tactic, part psychological warfare, he cut down her men one by one until he had her cornered. But here's the key. Euron didn't kill Yara on the spot. Instead, he took her prisoner. Why? Because Euron understood the value of leverage. Killing Yara would have been satisfying in the moment, but keeping her alive meant he could. 1. Use her as a bargaining chip with Cersei. 2. Publicly humiliate her to break the spirit of those who still supported her. 3. Toy with Theon, knowing his nephew's loyalty to his sister. This was not just a family rivalry. It was a calculated move to eliminate a political opponent while maximizing the personal humiliation he could inflict. The real reasons for Euron's betrayal. Now, let's break down the real reasons Euron turned on Yara in this brutal way. 1. Consolidating power. Euron's entire reign depended on projecting strength. The Ironborn respect one thing above all: victory. By publicly defeating and capturing Yara, he cemented his authority and eliminated a rival who had already proven she could undermine him. 2. Revenge for the Kingsmoot. Euron was not the type to forgive a public slight. Yara's attempt to claim the Salt Throne and her escape with his ships were personal insults that he could not allow to go unanswered. 3. Building credibility with Cersei. By bringing Yara as a prisoner, Euron proved to Cersei that he could deliver results. It wasn't just about ships, it was about demonstrating he could crush his enemies and bring valuable prizes to the table. 4. Psychological warfare. Euron didn't just want to win, he wanted his enemies to suffer. By keeping Yara alive and parading her as a trophy, he sent a message.